going to learn about how to make this beautiful asymmetric skirt that I've just shown you. Take note that if you want to learn how to make this handkerchief top that I'm wearing, I'll be linking it up here because I've released a video on it already. And if you love to watch sewing tutorials, stay glued to this channel, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and turn on the bell notification because every week we release amazing sewing tutorials just for you. So now let's get right there to the cutting and sewing of this beautiful skirt. To make this beautiful skirt, the measurements you would need are your skirt length measurement. This skirt length measurement is going to be both the length of the tight part of the skirt, which is like the basic skirt, and the full length of the skirt. We would also need the hip line measurement, then the hips measurement. So these are the main measurements you would need. By the way, if you need more tutorials on skirt making, do well to drop it in the comment section so I would know what to focus on. Now for this skirt, right now we're going to be drafting the skirt pattern, and it's going to be a very basic skirt pattern. For the purpose of this skirt pattern, we are going to be using the sleeve length of just the skirt pattern, not for the full skirt. Don't worry, as we progress you would see that the only thing we need this pattern for is just for the tight part, because for the asymmetric part it's more or less like freehand. Then the hip length of my client is 8 inches, then our hips measurement is 41 inches. So for the sleeve length we are going to be adding allowance of 0.5 inch, so our sleeve length is going to be 15 inches. For the hip line we are not going to be adding any allowance, it's still going to be 8 inches. Then for the hips measurement, we are going to be dividing it into 4 because of course it's going to be on fold. Divided into 4, we are going to be having 10 1/4. Then we are going to be adding 1 inch allowance to this, which will give us 11 1/4. So whatever your hips measurement is, you divide it into 4. And you would add 1 inch allowance. Some people would add 2 inches depending on how much allowance you want. In all these things I've done, I forgot to mention the waist measurement, which is also an important measurement. I'm sure you are wondering, what of the waist? So yeah, the waist. So for your waist measurement, it will be the same way you've done the hips measurement. You divide it into 4 and you would add your seam allowance. So for my client, her waist measurement is 30 inches. So 30 divided by 4 is 7.5, then plus 1 inch, 8.5. So right now we're going to measure the 8.5 inches. So this is our basic skirt measurement. Let's measure the 8.5. We'll measure this. Now remember the hip line measurement is 8 inches. Now we're not going to be putting 8 inches because for this skirt, it would have a band. And the band will take up about 2 inches. So don't forget that in everything you are doing, it has a band and you have to put that into consideration. So this is where we're supposed to take our hip line measurement, but we are going to take note of the 2 inches we would use for the band and mark the 8 inches. Or if you like, you just make it 6 inches because 8 minus 2 is 6 inches. So this is our client's hip line. What's happening to my marker? This is our client's hip line. Now right on the hip line measurement, that's where we'll take our client's hips measurement, and her hips is 11 1/4. So we'll take it here. The line is no longer enough. So yeah, 11 1/4. So that's it. So now we are going to use our curve ruler to connect from our client's waist to our client's hips. You could use your curve ruler, you could use your ruler. Let's use our ruler first. We will use our curve ruler later on. Then now we are going to be taking our client's sleeve length, which for us is 15 inches. So we are going to measure out the 15 inches. Taking note of the fact that we would still remove our 2 inches for the band. 15, 15. Yeah. Don't forget that if you are adding band, you have to take note of these little nitty-gritties. So this bit. Then we'll get our ruler and connect from our hips to. Now for this hem, it just depends on what you want. Now because we want this skirt to be very tight, we are just going to make use of our client's waist measurement. So whatever you have in the waist, we just replicate it because we want this to be very tight. Our waist is 8.5, so we'll just still make use of 8.5. Then we'll use our ruler to connect to the 8.5. Now, of course, we know that this is not how our shape is. This sharpness is not the way our body is. So we'll use our curve ruler to smoothen it. So yeah. So now it's straight. You would only have this issue when your client's waist measurement is dramatically different from their hips measurement, because there are some clients that it's going to be quite straight. And take note of the fact that on a normal day, we will not even use the waist measurement on the hem. What we'll do is to use the hips measurement, maybe minus 1 inch or 2 inches, but we want the hem region to actually be tight, and that explains the reason why this is what it is. So we're going to cut right now. Now remember that our skirt has a curve right in the middle. We can decide to put that curve right now or wait till we join our fabric. I personally prefer to wait till I join my fabric, then I will impute that. So we're just going to be leaving this like that. We are going to be cutting our fabric just like this. I'm using about 2.5 yards of fabric, and this is a very soft fabric. So for this, you can use silk, light scuba, chiffon, or any soft fabric. If you don't want your skirt to be very full, you can use 2 inches, but I want mine to be full and long. And remember that because it's a light fabric, even if it is full, it is not a problem. So right now, we're going to be cutting the front part. Take note that when you're cutting this, it's important that after cutting, you notch the front part, that's the middle, so that you would know the difference between the waistline and the hemline. And this is because some beginners may mistake both of them. For the back part of the skirt, I put 1 inch extra, so I've cut it by the size, and right now I'm opening it up. And this is what I meant by notching, just in the front. Just let there be a sign that this is the waistline and not the hemline. So this is the skirt, the front part of the skirt, and this is the back with the zipper measurement. So that's that. Right now we're going to be taking out the band measurement. For the band, remember that I said we are using 2 inches for the band, but of course when we are cutting, we're going to be cutting 2.5 inches because we are leaving 1/2 inch for the joining allowance. But the length of the band is going to be our client's waist measurement, which we said is 30 inches. So we're going to be having a band of length 30 and width 2.5. Take note that although our main band is going to be 2 inches, we are going to fold this into 2. Basically, this is folded into 2. So right now we are having about 4.5 inches, but remember it's on fold because we have to fold the band. So if you want to use 2 inches, ensure that you have about 4.5 inches, then you fold it and cut. Now for the length, I said 30 inches, but I'm still going to add about 1 or 2 inches. So right now we actually have 32 inches. and 4.5 inches. So let's cut. So this is our band. To sew the band, of course, we'll just sew it like this and turn it over. But let's leave sewing for that. Right now we're going to be cutting out our gathers. It's a very full one, but before we do that, we are going to arrange our fabric, because of course there are some parts that are like pieces, so we'll cut it out in a neat manner, then work with what we have. Right now I'm trying to decide how much of the fabric I want to use for my gathers, and I'm going to be using a lot. I measured this and it's about 2 yards, so it means for the upper part of the skirt I used about ½ yard. Now what I'm going to be doing now is to fold this into 2, which I've done. Then I'll just be cutting it into 2. I'll be using the remaining length as the length of my skirt. So basically this would reach the hem. So there is really no particular measurement for this. It depends on what you want. All you need to do is to measure your skirt length and decide on the skirt length you want to use and how wide you want it to be. If you want your skirt to be very full, ensure you use enough fabrics. Like for this one now, I've used 2 of this and I'll be joining it, then gathering it as I sew. Don't worry, as I sew you'll see all these details. So that concludes the cutting of this beautiful skirt. Let's move over to the sewing. First thing we're going to do is just to join the sides using our client's measurement, which is what we are doing right now. I've done the joining, so as you can see, I've joined all sides of our skirt. I've also joined our band. Right now, the next thing we're going to do is to put in our zipper, and basically it's just the normal way of putting in your zipper. I'm going to be using a small skirt zipper. If you want a video on how to fix zippers, please let me know in the comment section and I'll create a separate video for that. Basically with our zipper, we're going to just join our skirt to make it like a short skirt. So let's do that right now. We have sewn our zipper and we have finished making this short skirt. So right now we will be cutting this asymmetric part. So what we'll do is to locate the middle of the skirt and we'll fold just the way I've just done it. Then we would be cutting from wherever you want the skirt to be. So this is the curve that I'm going to be using. Don't worry, I hope it's going to be clearer by the time I cut. So it's just going to be like a slanted cut, and it just depends on where you want it to be. Now that I have cut out my curve, that's it about this cutting. And basically there are no measurements to how to cut it. It just depends on how you want the curve to be. So this is the fabric we're going to use, of course, for our gathers. So what I'm going to do right now is to sew it here so that it will just be one very long fabric. As you can see, it's going to be very full because that's the idea. Right now I'm going to be looking for the middle of our fabric. This is the fabric we'll use. Then of course the middle of our skirt. And for us to properly get the middle of our skirt, we are going to be opening up one side a bit. So we'll use a seam ripper to open up one side a bit. So that is it. We've used our seam ripper. So the most important thing is when we are trying to gather this our skirt, we have to ensure that one part is not significantly bigger than another part, and that's the reason why I've just done this division. I'll start from here. By the time I reach here, which is the side, I know I've reached the middle, then the next part, and that's just it. So let's go. Now basically we are gathering. You can do various kinds of styles with this particular design. You can pleat, you can gather. I want to gather. You can gather and pleat, and to gather it is just basically, since of course this is full, this is a lot of fabric, and this is small, we would just be pushing this fabric to suit this particular fabric. So you will see what I'm doing is just to push it, and that's just it. So this is what it looks like right now. This is what it looks like. Oh, it's looking so beautiful. This is the front and this is the back, but it's not covered because there is still this opening. So right now we'll just be covering it, then we'll be going to our cutting table to cut out our curve. So the same thing we did when we were trying to get the curve of the upper part of the skirt is what we'll do. So we'll locate the middle so that it will be a proper curve. Now that we're done cutting, the last thing we are going to do is to hem the edge. If you have your weaving machine, you can use that, but for me, I'm going to be using my bias strip to do the edge, and that successfully concludes the tutorial. So I've hemmed it with the bias, and that's it. The sewing of the asymmetric skirt. If you love this video, you are going to love this next video I've linked up for your viewing pleasure. And until next week, stay blessed, stay happy, and bye for now.